Fear is one of the most common emotions that shapes the way we live our lives. It whispers in our ears, telling us that we are not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy of love or success. It convinces us that the safest way to live is to hide who we truly are and only show the parts of ourselves that we think others will accept. Fear makes us shrink back when we should step forward, silencing our voices before they even have the chance to be heard. It builds invisible cages around us, and without realizing it, we begin to live trapped inside them. This trap of fear is powerful because it feeds on uncertainty and shame. When we make mistakes, fear reminds us of them over and over again, convincing us that we are defined by our failures. When we dream big, fear interrupts with every possible reason why those dreams will never come true. It thrives in moments of self-doubt and makes us believe that playing small is safer than taking risks. But the irony is that while fear tells us it is protecting us, it is actually stealing from us. It robs us of growth, joy, connection, and the chance to experience life fully. Many people carry fear in silence, convincing themselves that it is normal to feel unworthy or undeserving of happiness. They go to work, meet people, smile in public. But behind the mask there is a voice constantly saying, what if I fail? What if I'm rejected? What if I'm not enough? These questions play on repeat, creating a cycle of self-doubt that becomes exhausting. Living this way may feel safe because it avoids rejection, but it also avoids the beauty of authenticity and true connection. Fear makes us trade the richness of real living for the dull comfort of false safety. Fear not only affects how we see ourselves, but also how we relate to others. When we are afraid, we hesitate to show vulnerability, which is the very thing that builds trust and intimacy. We may avoid deep conversations, hide our emotions, or put up walls to protect ourselves from potential pain. In doing so, we distance ourselves from others and create shallow interactions that lack meaning. Fear convinces us that being guarded keeps us safe, but in reality, it keeps us lonely. Human beings are wired for connection, yet fear tricks us into isolation. One of the most damaging lies fear tells us is that we are alone in our struggle. It makes us believe that everyone else has it figured out and that we are the only ones who feel insecure, doubtful, or inadequate. This sense of isolation intensifies shame, making it even harder to open up. The truth, however, is that fear is universal. Everyone experiences it in some form. Recognizing this truth can help us loosen the grip of fear because we begin to see that we are not broken or weak. We are simply human. And being human means we will feel fear, but it does not have to control us. When fear becomes the dominant voice in our lives, it shapes our decisions and keeps us from reaching our full potential. It convinces us to settle for less than what we deserve, to stay in toxic relationships, or to avoid pursuing opportunities that could transform our future. We stop trying because we fear failure, forgetting that failure is often the greatest teacher of all. We silence our creativity because we fear criticism, not realizing that the world needs the gifts we hide. Fear makes us live half a life, and half a life will never satisfy the longing of the human spirit. Freedom from fear begins with awareness. When we recognize that fear is holding us back, we can begin to challenge its power. We can learn to listen to its voice without obeying it, to acknowledge its presence without allowing it to dictate our choices. Every act of courage, no matter how small, weakens fear's grip on us. Speaking up, trying something new, admitting we don't have all the answers, these are the steps that lead us away from fear and toward freedom. Transformation is not about eliminating fear, but about refusing to let fear decide the direction of our lives. Vulnerability is often misunderstood because we are taught from an early age that showing our true emotions makes us weak. Society rewards strength, control, and perfection, while shaming openness, honesty, and imperfection. We are told to keep our struggles hidden, to always present a strong face, and to never let others see our pain. Yet in reality, it takes far greater courage to show who we are than to hide behind a mask. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is bravery in its purest form. When we choose vulnerability, we are choosing to step into the unknown without guarantees. It is allowing ourselves to be seen even when we fear judgment. It is raising our hand in a room full of people, admitting we don't have the answer or confessing that we are struggling. These moments feel terrifying because they expose us, but they are also the moments that create the deepest connections. Vulnerability requires us to risk failure, rejection, and disappointment in order to find authenticity. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act despite it. Vulnerability is the embodiment of that principle. Every time we open our hearts, speak our truth, or ask for help, we are standing in courage. The world often tells us to stay silent, to be strong, to carry burdens alone. But true strength comes when we dare to share, to trust, and to connect. Vulnerability shifts our lives from performance to presence, from pretending to being. One of the most powerful aspects of vulnerability is that it humanizes us. We live in a culture obsessed with image, status, and perfection, but those things create distance between people. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we remind others that we are human too, with flaws, fears, and struggles. And in that shared humanity, we find belonging. Perfection isolates, but vulnerability unites. It gives permission to others to put down their armor and be real. It is easy to assume that vulnerability makes us targets for pain. And in some ways, that is true. When we open ourselves, we do risk being hurt. But closing ourselves off does not protect us from pain. It only ensures we suffer in silence. Pain is part of life, whether we hide from it or not. But vulnerability gives us the strength to move through it with support and compassion. It transforms pain into connection and connection into healing. Vulnerability is also the birthplace of creativity and innovation. Every new idea begins as a risk, an uncertain offering to the world that could be criticized or ignored. Without vulnerability, no one would share their art, tell their story, or create something new. It is the willingness to be seen, to risk rejection, that allows progress to happen. Some of the most life-changing ideas in history only existed because someone dared to be vulnerable enough to put them forward. Vulnerability fuels not only personal growth, but also collective transformation. Living with vulnerability means living with authenticity. It means we no longer hide behind roles, masks, or false strength. Instead, we choose to show up as our full selves, even when it feels uncomfortable. This authenticity invites trust, deepens relationships, and allows us to experience life without constant fear of exposure. Vulnerability does not promise that we will never be hurt, but it does promise that we will truly live. And in living fully, we discover a freedom that fear can never provide. True connection is something every human being longs for, yet it often feels out of reach because so many of us are caught up in the pursuit of perfection. We work tirelessly to present the best version of ourselves, believing that if we can appear flawless, then people will accept and love us. But perfection only creates distance because it hides our real humanity behind a carefully constructed mask. People don't connect with what is polished and untouchable. They connect with what is real and vulnerable. Authenticity, not perfection, is the bridge that leads to meaningful connection. When we spend our lives performing for others, we may gain temporary approval, but it never feels satisfying because deep down we know it isn't our true self that is being accepted. This constant performance leads to exhaustion and loneliness as we are always waiting for the moment when our mask might slip. Real belonging does not come from being perfect, but from being honest. It is the courage to say, this is who I am, flaws and all, that opens the door to genuine relationships. Without honesty, we may be surrounded by people, yet still feel completely alone. Perfection is seductive because it makes us believe we can avoid criticism, rejection, and disappointment. But in reality, perfection pushes others away because it feels unattainable and unrelatable. No one sees themselves in perfection. They see themselves in vulnerability, struggle, and imperfection. When we admit our fears, our mistakes, and our humanity, we create a space where others feel safe to do the same. That space is where true connection is born, and without it, relationships remain shallow. Connection thrives in honesty because honesty builds trust. When people know that we are not hiding or pretending, they can relax and open themselves to us as well. Trust cannot be built on fake has or rehearsed performances. It must be built on truth. Even when honesty is uncomfortable, it creates a foundation for real intimacy. The more we allow others to see our authentic selves, the stronger and more lasting our connections become. Honesty does not push people away. It draws them closer. Authenticity also requires us to let go of the need to control how others perceive us. Many of us are trapped in the fear of judgment, constantly shaping our words and actions to gain approval. But when we are always seeking to be liked, we lose the chance to be known. Vulnerability invites us to release that control and accept that not everyone will understand or appreciate us. Yet the ones who truly matter will value us not because we are perfect, but because we are real. Being real ensures that the connections we form are genuine, not conditional. When we stop performing, we discover that connection is not about impressing others, but about being present with them. It is about listening deeply, sharing openly, and showing up without pretense. This kind of presence allows us to see others as they truly are and to let them see us in return. The result is a bond that is not based on what we do, how we look, or what we achieve, but on who we are at our core. Perfection may earn applause, but authenticity earns love and belonging. The truth is that people are drawn to honesty because it makes them feel less alone. When we share our real stories, the fears, the struggles, the moments of doubt, we give others permission to embrace their own humanity. They realize that they are not the only ones who feel broken or uncertain, and that realization builds powerful connection. In this way, vulnerability becomes not just a personal act of courage, but a gift to others. By choosing honesty over perfection, we create communities where people can truly belong. Freedom does not come from certainty or control. It comes from learning to embrace the unknown with courage. Life is unpredictable, filled with twists we cannot plan for and challenges we cannot anticipate. When we cling to the need for certainty, we trap ourselves in fear, constantly waiting for the perfect moment before we act. Vulnerability invites us to step forward even when the outcome is unclear, to risk failure in order to grow. It is in that space of uncertainty where real freedom begins to take shape. The human mind craves safety, and safety often feels like predictability. But predictability limits possibility because it keeps us repeating the same patterns and avoiding the unknown. Vulnerability is the opposite of predictability. It is choosing to lean into moments where we cannot control how things will unfold. It is saying yes to opportunities without knowing where they will lead. By embracing uncertainty, we allow life to surprise us with new paths, new connections, and new strength we never knew we had. When we refuse to step into uncertainty, we may feel temporarily safe, but deep inside we remain unfulfilled. We sacrifice passion for comfort, growth for familiarity, and joy for routine. Vulnerability challenges us to step outside those limits and explore what is possible when we stop letting fear dictate our choices. Courage is not about erasing uncertainty. It is about standing in it with an open heart. The willingness to be vulnerable becomes the key that unlocks experiences we would never encounter otherwise. Every meaningful pursuit in life carries risk. Love requires the risk of heartbreak, creativity requires the risk of criticism, and success requires the risk of failure. If we demand guarantees before we act, we will never truly live. Vulnerability teaches us that while risk is unavoidable, it is also the birthplace of transformation. The fear of uncertainty loses power when we realize that growth only happens outside our comfort zones. By daring to step into the unknown, we exchange safety for freedom and fear for possibility. The discomfort of vulnerability often feels overwhelming because it strips away our illusions of control. We cannot script every conversation, predict every outcome, or ensure that others will respond the way we hope. But in surrendering the need for control, we create space for authenticity and connection. Vulnerability allows us to show up as ourselves without rehearsing or pretending, and trust that whatever happens, we are strong enough to face it. That trust in ourselves is what transforms fear into courage. Embracing uncertainty also opens the door to resilience. Every time we take a risk and survive it, we prove to ourselves that we are stronger than fear wants us to believe. Failure does not destroy us. Rejection does not define us. Instead, each uncertain step we take becomes a lesson, a chance to grow, and a reminder of our capacity to endure. Resilience is built not in avoiding uncertainty, but in walking through it, learning to rise each time we stumble. Vulnerability makes resilience possible because it asks us to keep showing up. When we learn to live vulnerably in the face of uncertainty, we begin to experience life more fully. We stop waiting for perfect conditions and start taking imperfect steps forward. We open ourselves to deeper love, greater creativity, and more authentic joy. Vulnerability transforms uncertainty from something to fear into something to embrace, because it is proof that we are alive and daring greatly. Freedom is not found in eliminating risk, but in learning to live with it, grow from it, and find beauty within it. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love because it requires us to open our hearts without guarantees. Love is never certain, and it cannot exist without the risk of loss, disappointment, or rejection. To love someone deeply means to hand them the power to hurt us, yet to trust them anyway. This act of opening ourselves is not weakness, but tremendous courage. Without vulnerability, love becomes shallow, guarded, and incomplete. But with it, love becomes authentic and transformative. Joy is another gift that vulnerability unlocks. To experience joy fully, we must be willing to embrace the possibility that it might not last. Many people hold back from feeling joy because they fear it will be taken away, so they dull their emotions to protect themselves from disappointment. But in doing so, they also numb their ability to feel the richness of life. Vulnerability allows us to savor joy in its fullness, accepting that it is fleeting yet still worth embracing completely. Creativity thrives only in spaces where vulnerability exists. Every act of creation, whether it is art, writing, music, or innovation, is an offering of the self to the world. It is saying, this is my vision, my voice, my truth, while knowing that it might be misunderstood or rejected. To create is to risk criticism, but without that risk, creativity withers in silence. Vulnerability fuels the courage to bring ideas into the light, and through it, creativity becomes a force that changes lives. Faith, too, is rooted in vulnerability because it calls us to believe in what cannot be proven. Whether it is faith in ourselves, in others, or in something greater, it requires us to let go of certainty. Vulnerability invites us to trust that even when we cannot see the outcome, stepping forward is still worthwhile. It asks us to embrace hope even when the evidence is not visible. Without vulnerability, faith is impossible because faith is the courage to stand in uncertainty and still believe. What makes vulnerability powerful is that it binds all of these experiences together. Love, joy, creativity, and faith may seem different, but they share the common thread of risk. None of them can exist in environments of control or perfection. They require openness, honesty, and the willingness to be seen for who we truly are. Vulnerability acts as the soil where these gifts take root and flourish. Without it, they cannot grow. With it, they become sources of meaning and fulfillment in our lives. Many people avoid vulnerability because they associate it with pain, forgetting that the absence of vulnerability also means the absence of these powerful experiences. By protecting ourselves from rejection, we also shut ourselves off from love. By numbing disappointment, we numb joy. By hiding our creativity, we silence our own potential. The walls we build to avoid pain may keep us safe, but they also keep us small. Vulnerability tears down those walls, reminding us that the risk of hurt is worth the richness of living fully. When we allow vulnerability to lead us, we open ourselves to transformation. We begin to experience relationships that are deeper, emotions that are richer, and lives that feel more meaningful. Vulnerability asks us to stop choosing comfort over growth, safety over connection, and certainty over possibility. It teaches us that love is worth the risk, joy is worth the fleeting nature, creativity is worth the criticism, and faith is worth the uncertainty. In living vulnerably, we discover the true essence of what it means to be alive. Fear is often painted as the enemy, but the truth is that fear will never fully disappear from our lives. It will always whisper in the background, reminding us of risks, failures, and the possibility of rejection. Many people wait for the day when they will feel fearless before they take action, but that day never comes. Courage is not about eliminating fear. It is about learning to move forward despite its presence. Vulnerability gives us the strength to carry fear with us while still stepping into the arena. When we allow fear to dictate our choices, we shrink ourselves into smaller versions of who we were meant to be. Fear convinces us to stay silent, to avoid risk, and to remain hidden, all in the name of safety. But the safety it promises is an illusion because it keeps us trapped in unfulfilling patterns. Courage interrupts this cycle by reminding us that progress cannot happen without discomfort. Vulnerability is the tool that helps us break free, allowing us to show up authentically even when fear is loud. Acting with courage in the presence of fear is what makes transformation possible. Every time we dare to raise our voice, share our story, or step outside our comfort zone, we weaken fear's grip. Fear thrives in silence and avoidance, but it loses power when we face it head on. Vulnerability challenges us to replace the question, what if I fail, with what if I grow? It shifts our perspective from fear of loss to the possibility of transformation. Fear also tends to magnify shame, making us believe that our flaws and failures define us. This is where vulnerability offers a radical alternative. By being willing to own our imperfections and share them openly, we dismantle shame's control. We show ourselves and others that fear does not need to silence us. In fact, vulnerability transforms shame into connection because our honesty creates space for others to say, me too. Courage grows in those moments of shared humanity. It is important to recognize that courage is built in small acts, not just grand gestures. Every time we tell the truth, admit our struggles, or take a risk, we are strengthening our courage muscle. Fear may still be present, but it becomes less paralyzing the more we practice vulnerability. Courage is not about ignoring fear, but about walking hand in hand with it. Over time, these small acts of bravery accumulate, transforming how we see ourselves and the world. Living with courage also means accepting that setbacks are inevitable. Vulnerability teaches us that failure is not something to be feared, but something to be learned from. Each stumble becomes proof that we are daring to try, that we are refusing to let fear control us. The most resilient people are not those who never feel afraid, but those who keep rising each time they fall. Vulnerability fuels resilience because it encourages us to keep showing up, even when the outcome is uncertain. When we begin to embrace vulnerability in the face of fear, life takes on a new sense of freedom. We stop waiting for the perfect conditions and start creating our own path. We stop letting fear decide who we are and instead allow courage to shape our identity. Vulnerability turns fear from an obstacle into a teacher, showing us where growth is possible. By choosing courage over comfort, we unlock the door to transformation and begin to live lives defined not by fear, but by freedom. Living vulnerably means stepping into life without the heavy armor we often carry to protect ourselves from judgment or pain. Armor feels safe, but it also keeps us distant, hidden and disconnected from the richness of authentic living. Vulnerability asks us to put that armor down and show up as we truly are, even if it feels uncomfortable. It is choosing authenticity over fear, openness over hiding, and truth over performance. In doing so, we unlock the freedom to live fully and without pretense. When we live vulnerably, we allow ourselves to experience deeper connections with others. Relationships thrive not on perfection, but on trust, honesty, and authenticity. By being willing to share our true selves, we give others permission to do the same. This creates bonds that are rooted in reality rather than appearances. Instead of shallow interactions, we build connections that bring comfort, meaning, and belonging, all because we dared to be vulnerable. Choosing authenticity over fear also frees us from the exhausting cycle of seeking approval. Many people live their lives trying to fit into the expectations of others, molding themselves into versions that will be accepted. Vulnerability breaks this pattern by inviting us to stop performing and start being. When we live authentically, not everyone will approve, but the acceptance we receive is real and lasting. Living vulnerably ensures that the love and respect we experience are based on who we truly are, not on a mask we wear. Freedom through vulnerability also means we no longer let shame control our lives. Shame tells us to hide our struggles, to pretend we have it all together, and to never reveal our weaknesses. Vulnerability does the opposite. It shines a light on our imperfections and allows us to share them without fear of rejection. In that openness, shame loses its power and we gain the courage to grow. Freedom comes not from hiding our flaws, but from embracing them as part of our humanity. Living vulnerably transforms the way we experience challenges. Instead of fearing failure or rejection, we begin to see them as opportunities for growth. Vulnerability allows us to take risks, try new things, and pursue dreams without waiting for perfection. Even when we stumble, we learn, adapt, and rise stronger than before. This shift in perspective turns obstacles into stepping stones because vulnerability teaches us that failure is not the end, but part of the journey to freedom. Authenticity also allows us to experience joy more deeply. When we are hiding behind fear, even moments of happiness feel incomplete because we are never fully present. Vulnerability helps us let go of the what-ifs and embrace joy in the moment. It allows us to celebrate the good without worrying about how long it will last. Living vulnerably means giving ourselves permission to feel fully alive, embracing both the beauty and the fragility of life. Ultimately, vulnerability is the key to inner peace. When we stop hiding, stop pretending, and stop fearing rejection, we finally allow ourselves to rest in our own truth. We no longer waste energy maintaining walls or masks, and instead we focus on living with openness and courage. Freedom is not found in controlling life, but in accepting it with authenticity. By choosing to live vulnerably, we create space for love, growth, connection, and peace to flourish in ways fear could never allow.